I, 28F, stood near the back of the reception hall, a glass of lukewarm champagne in my hand. My sister Amelia was radiant in her wedding dress, seated next to her new husband, Mark. They looked happy. I wanted them to be happy. I truly did. My role today was simple. Maid of honor. Smile, hold the bouquet, fix the train, and make sure everything went smoothly. I had done all of that. All that was left was to endure the toasts, and then I could finally relax. My feet were already aching in shoes I would never wear again. My dad, Richard, stood up, tapping his glass with a fork. A hush fell over the room. He beamed at Amelia, his favorite. It was never a secret. He cleared his throat and began his speech. He talked about watching her grow up, about her achievements in law school, about how proud he was of the woman she had become. It was a standard, loving father of the bride speech. I smiled along with everyone else, feeling a familiar, dull ache in my chest. It was the ache of being the other daughter. The one who was loved, I suppose, but not admired. He raised his glass. "To Amelia and Mark," he said, his voice booming with pride. "A perfect match. You know, parents aren't supposed to have favorites." A few people chuckled nervously. I felt my stomach tighten. I knew where this was going. He had a way of delivering compliments to Amelia that were simultaneously insults to me. "But," he continued, looking directly at me for a brief, cold moment, "I always knew one of my daughters was the smarter choice." The words hit me like a physical blow. The air left my lungs. The room was silent for a second, a thick, uncomfortable silence. Then a few people, the ones who didn't know our family dynamic, laughed politely. Amelia just smiled, a little blush on her cheeks, as if she had just been handed the world's most wonderful compliment. She didn't even flinch. She didn't look at me. She just accepted it, that she was the smarter choice. And by extension, I was the dumber one. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me. I could feel the pity, the curiosity. I tried to keep the smile plastered on my face, but my muscles were frozen. It felt like a grimace. My dad sat down, pleased with himself. My mom, Helen, shot me a look from across the table. It was her usual look. A warning. "Don't make a scene, Clara. Not tonight." But I couldn't stay. I couldn't sit there and pretend that my own father hadn't just announced to a room full of our friends and family that I was a disappointment. I couldn't watch them celebrate this union that was now tainted with my public humiliation. My heart was pounding in my ears. I had to get out. Quietly, I set my untouched champagne glass down on a nearby table. I turned and walked toward the exit. I didn't run. I walked with a deliberate, steady pace, my back straight. I could feel my mom's glare following me. I could feel my sister's indifference. I could feel my dad's smug satisfaction. Each step was heavier than the last. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the venue and stepped out into the cool night air. The sounds of the party, the music and laughter, faded behind me. I was alone, and the relief was so overwhelming I almost collapsed. I walked for a block before I even realized where I was going. My car was in the venue's parking lot, but I couldn't go back there. Not yet. I just kept walking, the clicking of my heels on the pavement the only sound. Then my phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text from my mom. "Where are you? You are being incredibly selfish. Come back inside right now." I ignored it. My fingers were trembling. Selfish. I was the selfish one. Not the man who used his daughter's wedding to insult his other child. Not the bride who basked in the glow of that insult. Me. For leaving. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Amelia. "Seriously, Clara? You're ruining my wedding. Whatever Dad said, just get over it. It's my day. Get over it." The two most dismissive words in the English language. I stopped under a streetlight and stared at her message. My day. As if her day gave everyone a free pass to treat me like dirt. As if my feelings were an inconvenience to her perfect celebration. Anger, hot and sharp, finally pierced through the shock and the hurt. I took a deep breath. I thought about what to do. I could go back in there and pretend. I could smooth it over, apologize for being selfish, and swallow the bitter pill of my father's cruelty. That's what they expected. It's what I had always done. But not this time. This time was different. That comment wasn't just an off-the-cuff remark. It was a declaration. He had drawn a line in the sand in front of 200 people, and I was on the wrong side of it. Fine. I would stay there. I typed a reply to Amelia. I'm not coming back. Enjoy your party. Before she could respond, I turned my phone off. I slid it back into my clutch and started walking again, this time with a destination in mind. I was going to my friend Chloe's apartment. I needed to talk to someone who saw me as a person, not as a disappointment or an accessory to someone else's big day. The walk was long. It gave me time to think. The phrase, smarter choice, echoed in my head. It wasn't just about my life path, my decision to become a graphic designer while Amelia pursued corporate law. It felt deeper than that. It felt like it was about something specific. My dad owned a successful marketing firm. It had been his life's work. For years, he had talked about one of us taking it over. He had pitted us against each other in subtle and not-so-subtle ways. Amelia, with her business-adjacent law degree, was the obvious candidate in his eyes. I, the creative, was not. He had dangled the possibility in front of me just enough to keep me engaged, to make me work on freelance projects for the firm for little pay, to get my ideas. He would say things like, "Show me you have the business sense, Clara, and we'll talk." I had tried. I had put together proposals. I had developed marketing strategies for his clients. He always found fault with them. Too risky. Not scalable. You don't understand the bottom line. Then, a month later, I would see a version of my idea implemented, with Amelia's name attached to the internal memo. When I would confront him, he would gaslight me. That's a very common idea, Clara. Amelia just has a better grasp of the execution. Amelia would just shrug and say, "Sorry, I guess we just think alike." The wedding toast wasn't just a toast. I was sure of it now. It was an announcement. He was telling the world, and more importantly, he was telling me that the decision was made. Amelia was getting the company. She was the smarter choice. The insult was just a bonus for him. A little public flourish to put me firmly in my place. The thought made me sick. It was all a game, and I had been the fool who didn't even realize she was playing. By the time I reached Chloe's building, the anger had solidified into something cold and hard. It wasn't just about a mean comment anymore. It was about my work, my ideas, my future. It was about the years of being made to feel small and inadequate. I buzzed her apartment. Her voice came through the intercom, fuzzy and concerned. "Clara, what's wrong? I thought you were at the wedding." "I was," I said, my own voice sounding hollow. "Can I come up?" "Of course," she said immediately. The lock buzzed and I pushed the door open. Chloe, 30, F, was waiting for me at her apartment door, wearing pajamas and a worried expression. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I stepped inside and she wrapped me in a hug. That's when the dam broke. I started to cry, silent, angry tears that I had been holding back for hours. She just held me, not saying anything, until the shaking subsided. She led me to her couch and sat next to me, handing me a tissue. "Tell me everything," she said softly. So I did. I told her about the toast. I recited my dad's words, the exact tone he used. I told her about the silence in the room, the pitying looks. I told her about the texts from my mom and Amelia, calling me selfish. Chloe listened patiently, her expression growing more and more furious on my behalf. "Are you kidding me?" she finally burst out when I was done. "He said that? In front of everyone?" I nodded, wiping my eyes. And Amelia just sat there and smiled. "Of course she did." Chloe scoffed. "She's been waiting her whole life for that coronation. And your mom? Don't make a scene?" "Her specialty. I said with a bitter laugh, preserving the illusion of a happy family at all costs, even if one of the family members is being emotionally shredded. They are unbelievable, Chloe said, shaking her head. So you walked out. Good for you. Now I'm the villain, I said. I ruined her perfect day. Her day was ruined the moment your dad decided to be a cruel monster on a microphone. Chloe said fiercely, That is not on you. What you did was self-preservation. She was right. I knew she was right. But the years of conditioning of being the peacemaker were hard to shake. A part of me still felt a pang of guilt. There's more, I said, my voice quiet. I don't think it was just a random insult. I think it was about the company. I explained my theory. That the smarter choice comment was my dad's way of announcing that Amelia was taking over the family business. Chloe's eyes narrowed. She was a financial analyst, and her mind immediately went to the practical implications. The company your grandmother helped him start? She asked. The one where your grandmother left you those shares in her will? I had forgotten about that. When my grandma passed away, she had left me a 10% stake in the company. It was her way of ensuring I always had a place there. A voice. My dad had been annoyed by it at the time, but it was ironclad in her will. He couldn't touch it. For years, it hadn't meant much. It was a minority stake. I got a small dividend check every year, and that was it. I never had any real power. Yes, I said slowly, the gears in my mind starting to turn. I have 10%. 10% is not nothing, Clara, Chloe said, leaning forward. You're a part owner. You have rights. You have the right to see the company's books, for one. He'd never let me, I said. He'd say I don't understand them, that I'm being difficult. He doesn't get to let you, Chloe said, her voice firm. It's your legal right as a shareholder. If he's handing the company over to Amelia, you need to know what you own. You need to know what that 10% is actually worth. A new feeling started to bubble up inside me, pushing aside the hurt and the anger. It was determination. She was right. For years, I had let my dad define my relationship with the company. I had accepted his narrative that I was just the creative one, not suited for the real business. I had accepted my tiny dividend checks without question, but that toast had changed everything. He had publicly declared me the lesser daughter. He and Amelia had celebrated my demotion. They wanted me to be small. I would not be small. You're right, I said. My voice stronger now. I need to see the books. And I can help you understand them, Chloe offered. We can go through them together, see what's really going on in that company. What if there's nothing there? I asked, a sliver of doubt creeping in. What if it's all perfectly normal and I'm just making a fool of myself? Then you'll know, Chloe said simply. You'll have your answer and you can make a decision about what to do with your shares based on facts, not on your father's insults. But my gut tells me there's something there. People who are that arrogant in public usually have something to hide in private. Her words resonated with me. My dad's smugness. Amelia's complicit smile. It wasn't just confidence. It was the look of people who thought they had gotten away with something. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Okay, how do I do it? How do I demand to see the financials? You write a formal letter, Chloe explained, citing your position as a shareholder and requesting access to the financial records for the past 5 years. Send it via certified mail so there's a record that they received it. He'll have to comply or he'll be in legal trouble. It felt like a huge step, a declaration of war. My family would explode. My mom would call me a traitor. My dad would rage. Amelia would play the victim. I braced myself for the inevitable storm, but for the first time, I felt ready for it. Let them explode. They had lit the match. The next morning, my phone was a minefield of missed calls and voicemails. 27 missed calls, to be exact. 15 from my mom, 10 from Amelia, and 2 from an unknown number that I suspected was one of my aunts, deputized into the guilt campaign. I listened to one of my mom's voicemails. Her voice was trembling with manufactured tears. Clara, I cannot believe you. Your sister is devastated. You turned her wedding into a circus. Your father is beside himself. He didn't mean it the way it sounded. You know how he is. You need to call me back and apologize to your sister immediately. I deleted it without a second thought. He didn't mean it the way it sounded? He meant it exactly the way it sounded, and my mom's insistence on pretending otherwise was just as insulting. I spent the morning with Chloe drafting the letter. She knew the precise legal language to use. It was polite, formal, and non-negotiable. It cited the specific state statutes that gave me the right to inspect corporate records. It requested balance sheets, income statements, cash flow statements, and detailed expense reports. We made it thorough. By the time we were done, it was a formidable document. "This is going to set off a bomb," I said, looking at the printed letter on Chloe's coffee table. "Good," she replied. "Let it. They've been living in a fantasy world where their actions have no consequences. It's time for a reality check." I went to the post office that afternoon. Holding the certified mail receipt in my hand felt like holding a key. I didn't know what door it would unlock or what I would find on the other side, but I knew I had to open it. The rest of the day, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had taken action. I was no longer just reacting to their cruelty. I was making a move of my own. That evening, the first wave of the explosion hit. My dad called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short and cold. "I received your letter. We need to talk. Call me." There was no anger in his voice, just icy control. That was far more intimidating. Then my mom called again. I decided to answer this time. I needed to start setting the new boundaries. "Clara? Finally, your father is furious," she began, without even a hello. "I'm sure he is," I said, my voice even. "What do you think you are doing?" she demanded. "Suing your own family?" "I'm not suing anyone, Mom," I corrected her. "I am exercising my legal right as a shareholder to see the company's financial records. It's a standard business procedure." "This is not a standard business procedure. This is an attack," she cried. "After you already humiliated us at the wedding, why are you trying to destroy this family?" There it was again. I was the destroyer. I took a breath. Dad humiliated me at the wedding. I just left. And asking to see the books of a company I partly own is not an attack. It's due diligence. I used the term Chloe had taught me. It sounded professional. It sounded strong. Due diligence? You're a graphic designer. What do you know about due diligence? She scoffed. You're just trying to cause trouble because you're jealous of your sister. The accusation stung, but I didn't let it show. This has nothing to do with jealousy, I said calmly. This has to do with my financial stake in the company. Dad announced to the world that he's made his smarter choice. I assume that means he's giving the company to Amelia. I have a right to know the value of my shares before that happens. There was a pause on the other end of the line. He didn't mean it like that, she said, her voice weaker now. How did he mean it, Mom? I pressed. Please explain it to me. What's the other interpretation of "I always knew one of my daughters was the smarter choice" delivered at the other daughter's wedding? She was silent. She had no answer, because there was no other interpretation. You are being difficult, Clara, she finally said, resorting to the old familiar script. Your father works so hard. Your sister has worked so hard, and you just want to tear it all down. No, I said, my voice hard as stone. I just want to see the books. He has 30 days to comply. It's the law. I have to go now, Mom. I hung up before she could reply. My hand was shaking, but I felt a surge of adrenaline. I had held my ground. I hadn't backed down. I hadn't apologized. The conversation was painful, but it was necessary. It was the first brick in a new wall I was building around myself. A few days later, a large manila envelope arrived at my apartment. It contained a stack of financial statements. There was no letter, no note, just the documents. I called Chloe immediately. They're here, I said. I'll be right over, she replied. We spread the papers out on my dining room table. It was a sea of numbers and jargon. Balance sheets, income statements, pages and pages of them. At first glance, nothing seemed obviously wrong. The company was profitable, though less so than I would have expected. The revenue seems a little low for the past 2 years, Chloe commented, her finger tracing a line on one of the statements. Did they lose a major client? Not that I know of, I said. Dad always boasts about his client retention. We kept digging. Chloe was methodical. She cross-referenced everything. She had brought her laptop and was plugging numbers into spreadsheets, looking for patterns. For hours, we worked in silence, fueled by coffee. Then Chloe stopped. Huh? She said. That's weird. What is it? I asked, leaning over. She pointed to a line item on the expense report. Consulting fees, it read. The amount was staggering. It was nearly a quarter of the company's annual net profit. Who are they consulting with that costs that much? I wondered aloud. Let's see, Chloe said, flipping through the pages. The payments are all going to the same entity, AM Innovations LLC. AM Innovations, I repeated. The initials clicked in my head. AM Amelia. My sister's name was Amelia Marie. Wait a second. I pulled out my phone and did a quick search for the company. The state's business registry popped up. AM Innovations LLC was registered just 2 years ago. The registered agent and sole officer was listed as Amelia, my sister. I felt the blood drain from my face. Chloe, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's her. Amelia is AM Innovations. Chloe looked from my phone back to the expense report, her eyes wide. They are paying your sister hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees? What kind of consulting could she possibly be doing to justify that? I asked, my mind reeling. She was a lawyer, yes, but the firm had its own legal team. She didn't have a background in marketing strategy beyond the ideas she had stolen from me. This is not a consulting fee, Clara, Chloe said, her voice grim. This is how they're pulling money out of the company. They're funneling profits to Amelia under the guise of a business expense. This reduces the company's taxable income, and more importantly, it reduces the company's official net worth. Why would they do that? I asked, though I already knew the answer. To devalue your shares, Chloe said, her voice soft but firm. If the company is worth less on paper, your 10% stake is worth less. They're probably getting ready to make you a lowball offer to buy you out. They bleed the company dry, make it look like it's struggling, and then offer to take your worthless shares off your hands for a pittance. It all clicked into place. The smarter choice comment. The years of belittling my business sense. They weren't just insults. They were part of a long, calculated strategy to push me out and steal the full value of my inheritance. They had been playing a long game, and I had been their unwitting pawn. The hurt I felt was deeper than anything I had felt at the wedding. This was not a moment of casual cruelty. This was a premeditated, multi-year conspiracy. My own father and sister had been systematically cheating me. They had been laughing behind my back, calling me the dumb one while they lined Amelia's pockets with money that was, in part, mine. And her wedding, I said, the realization dawning on me. That incredibly lavish wedding. The designer dress, the 5-star venue, the 10-piece band. Mark, her husband, is a high school teacher. He couldn't afford that. Amelia is just a few years out of law school. She couldn't afford that. The company paid for it. Chloe finished for me. I bet if we dig into these expense reports, we'll find the caterer, the florist, the venue, all billed as corporate event expenses or something similar. We started looking, and there it was. A huge payment to a hospitality group that I recognized as the wedding venue. A massive floral arrangement expense from a high-end boutique. A talent booking fee that was surely the band. It was all there, disguised as legitimate business costs. They had used the company, our family's legacy, as their personal piggy bank to fund Amelia's fairy tale wedding. The same wedding where my father had stood up and called me the dumber choice. The irony was so bitter it made me want to scream. I sat back in my chair, stunned into silence. It was so much worse than I had imagined. This was not just favoritism. This was fraud. "What do I do?" I asked Chloe, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and despair. "What can I do?" Chloe looked at me, her expression serious. "You have a choice," she said. "You have enough evidence here to go to the authorities. This is tax evasion and corporate fraud. They could face serious legal consequences. Prison time, even." The thought of my father and sister in prison was terrifying. As much as they had hurt me, they were still my family. "Or?" I asked. "Or," she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "You use this as leverage. You have them cornered, Clara. You can set the terms. You can take back what they tried to steal from you. And more." The idea of a quiet, devastating victory was far more appealing than a public, messy legal battle. I didn't want to destroy them in a way that would also destroy my mother and the shreds of our extended family. But I could not let them get away with this. I wanted them to know that I knew. I wanted to see the looks on their faces when they realized the dumb daughter had outsmarted them all. "Leverage," I repeated, the word tasting like power. "Tell me how." The plan we came up with was simple, but brutal. It required patience and a bit of acting on my part. The first step was to let them think their plan was working. I had to play the part they had cast for me, the emotional, irrational daughter who was in over her head. I waited a week. It was the longest week of my life. I didn't contact my parents or my sister. I let them stew. I imagined the conversations they were having. Dad, furious at my audacity. Amelia, probably smug, telling him not to worry, that I'd get bored and give up. Mom, wringing her hands and trying to call me, but I didn't answer. Then I called my dad. I made sure to sound flustered and uncertain. "Dad?" I started, my voice wavering slightly. I got the documents." "I know you did," he said, his tone clipped and impatient. "What is the meaning of this, Clara? What's your game?" "It's not a game," I said, injecting a note of pleading into my voice. With the wedding and what you said, I got worried. About my shares, about my future." "Your future is fine," he snapped. "Your shares are fine. The company is struggling a bit, as you can see from the numbers. The market is tough. It's nothing you need to worry your pretty little head about." There it was. The condescension. The pat on the head. "Don't you worry your pretty little head." It took every ounce of my self-control not to scream at him. Instead, I leaned into the role. "I know," I said meekly. I don't understand all these numbers. It looks bad. Is the company going to be okay?" I could almost hear the smirk in his voice. "We'll manage. We always do. This is why I handle the business, and you handle the art. Everyone has their strengths." "Right," I said. "So, what does this mean for my shares? Are they worthless?" He paused. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment the dumb daughter admitted defeat. "They're not worthless," he said, his voice softening into a tone of fake sympathy. "But their value has decreased significantly over the past couple of years. It's a bad investment for you to hold on to, frankly. It's a headache you don't need." "Oh," I said, sounding small and lost. "Listen," he continued, moving in for the kill. "Your sister and I were talking. We feel bad about how things have been. We don't want you to have to worry about this. We're prepared to make you an offer to buy your shares, to take this burden off your shoulders." "An offer?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Yes, a very generous one under the circumstances," he said. "We'll pay you $50,000 for your 10% stake." $50,000, I almost laughed. Based on the real pre-fraud numbers Chloe and I had estimated, the company was worth at least $5 million. My 10% stake was worth $500,000. He was offering me a tenth of its actual value. It was an insultingly low number, designed to prey on my supposed ignorance and desperation. 50,000? I repeated, letting my voice crack a little. That's all it's worth? I'm afraid so, he said, the feigned sadness in his voice making my skin crawl. Like I said, the market is tough. It's the best we can do. It's more than fair, Clara. It's a gift, really. A gift. He was trying to steal nearly $500,000 from me and calling it a gift. I need to think about it, I stammered. Of course, he said, magnanimous in his deception. Take your time. But the offer is only on the table for a limited time. We need to restructure things, and we can't do that with minority shareholders getting in the way. It was a threat, wrapped in a pretty bow. Take the deal or risk getting nothing. Okay, I whispered. I'll call you back. I hung up the phone and let out a long, shaky breath. I had done it. I had played my part. He had taken the bait completely. He thought I was beaten. He thought he had won. I immediately called Chloe and told her everything. 50,000, she shrieked with laughter. The nerve of that man. He really thinks you're a fool. He's about to find out how wrong he is, I said, a cold smile on my face. What's the next step? The next step is the fun part, Chloe said. We need more than just the financials. We need irrefutable proof of their intent. The financials show what they did. But we need something that shows why they did it, in their own words. How do we get that? I asked. You mentioned a shared family cloud account? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, we've had it for years. We used to use it for sharing family photos and stuff. I haven't logged in for ages. People get lazy with things like that, Chloe said. They forget what's on there, who has access. It's a long shot, but it's worth looking. See if there are any old documents, any saved emails, anything. That night, I sat down at my computer and tried to log into the family cloud drive. I had to reset the password, but I still had access to the recovery email, my old account from college. After a few minutes, I was in. The drive was mostly what I expected. Vacation photo albums from 10 years ago, old school projects. But then I saw a folder I didn't recognize. It was just labeled Corp. My heart started to beat faster. I clicked on it. Inside were dozens of documents, drafts of contracts, old business plans. It seemed to be a messy backup of my dad's work computer from years ago. I started to sift through them, my hopes fading. It was mostly junk. And then I saw it. A subfolder titled Restructure. My hands were trembling as I opened it. Inside were several email files. It looked like he had saved an entire email thread as a document. The subject line was the Clara problem. I opened the first file. It was an email from my dad to Amelia, dated almost 3 years ago, right after my grandmother's will was finalized. Amelia, it began, we need to discuss the Clara problem. Your grandmother's decision to give her 10% of the company is a complication. She's emotional and has no head for business. We can't have her as a permanent fixture, questioning our decisions. I felt a wave of nausea. He had been planning this for 3 years. I opened the next email in the thread. It was Amelia's reply. I agree, Dad, she wrote. She'll be a liability. We need a way to minimize her stake or buy her out. But she's sentimental about Grandma's gift. She won't sell unless she thinks it's worthless. The next email was from my dad. It laid out the whole plan. Exactly. So we make it worthless. Or at least we make it look worthless. We'll set you up with a consulting company. We'll run expenses through it. It will reduce our profits on paper, which will drive down the company's valuation. In a couple of years, she'll be begging us to take the shares off her hands for a fraction of their real value. She's not smart enough to figure it out. She'll just see the bottom line and panic. She's not smart enough to figure it out. The words burned on the screen. It was their entire philosophy, their whole view of me, summed up in one sentence. I was the dumb one, the emotional one, the one who could be easily manipulated. The final email was from Amelia. It was just one line. Perfect. Let's do it. I leaned back in my chair, the air knocked out of me. I had it. The smoking gun. Their entire fraudulent conspiracy laid out in their own words. The condescension, the greed, the utter disrespect. It was all there. I saved a copy of the files to a secure thumb drive and then saved another copy to my personal cloud storage. I made 3 backups. I wasn't taking any chances. Now I had everything I needed. The financial proof of the fraud and the written proof of their intent. They had built a cage for me, but they had accidentally left the key on my old family hard drive. And now, I was going to use that key to lock them in it. I didn't call my dad back right away. I let him wait. I let him think I was agonizing over his generous offer. I let him and Amelia feel confident, secure in their victory. During this time, I met with a corporate lawyer Chloe had recommended. A sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davies. I laid everything out for her. The financials Chloe and I had analyzed, the printouts of the emails. I told her the whole story, from the wedding toast to the $50,000 offer. Ms. Davies listened without interruption, her face unreadable. When I was finished, she looked at the email printouts for a long time. "They put this in writing?" she finally asked, a note of disbelief in her voice. "They did," I said. "And saved it to a shared drive that you had access to?" "Yes." She shook her head slowly, a small, grim smile on her face. "Arrogance. It makes people incredibly stupid. Mr. Richards' biggest mistake wasn't the fraud. It was underestimating you." Hearing a lawyer say it made it feel real. It validated everything. "So, what are my options?" I asked. "You have several," she explained. "As your friend pointed out, you could go to the district attorney and the IRS. This is a criminal case. They would almost certainly face prosecution, heavy fines, and likely jail time. It would be a public spectacle." I shook my head. "I don't want that. I don't want to send my own father and sister to prison, as tempting as it is." "I understand," she said. "The other option is a civil suit. You could sue them for the full value of your shares, plus punitive damages. You would win. It would still be a matter of public record, and it would get messy, but it's less severe than criminal charges." "Is there a third option?" I asked. "One that's quieter?" Ms. Davies leaned forward. "There is. It's the option I would recommend. We don't go to the courts, we go to them. We use this evidence as leverage to force a private settlement, but we don't ask for the value of your shares." "What do we ask for?" I said. "Everything," she said simply. "You have them in a position of total compromise. They have committed serious felonies. The threat of exposure is your weapon. You can demand a controlling interest in the company." The idea was staggering. It was more than I had ever dared to imagine. Me? In control of the company? The dumb daughter running the whole show? "Is that even possible?" I asked. "With this evidence?" "It's more than possible," Ms. Davies assured me. "They will have a choice. Sign over their shares to you for a nominal fee to make it legal, or face the consequences of their actions. Faced with financial ruin and prison, most people will choose to simply lose their company." It was perfect. It was a punishment that fit the crime. They had tried to steal my small piece of the company, so I would take all of it. They had abused their power, so I would strip them of it entirely. They had called me stupid, and my victory would be the ultimate proof of their foolishness. "That's what I want," I said, my voice filled with the resolve I had never felt before. "I want the company." "Excellent," Ms. Davies said. "Then here's what we do. We call a special board meeting." The company's board consisted of 3 people: my father, who was the chairman and CEO, Amelia, who he had appointed as vice president a year ago, and me, the forgotten 10% shareholder. We send a formal notice for a special board meeting, Ms. Davies instructed. The agenda will be vague, to discuss the recent buyout offer and the future of the company. You will attend. I will attend as your legal counsel. They will likely bring their own lawyer. That's fine. And then what? I asked. And then, she said, a glint in her eye, you put on a performance. A week later, I walked into the conference room at my father's firm. It was the first time I had been there in over a year. The air was thick with tension. My dad sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of stern disapproval. Amelia was beside him, looking smug and impatient. Next to them was their lawyer, a man named Mr. Henderson, who looked deeply uncomfortable. I took a seat opposite them. Ms. Davies sat beside me, placing her briefcase on the table with a soft click. My dad began without any preamble. Clara, I hope you have come to your senses. This meeting is a complete waste of everyone's time. Have you decided to accept our generous offer? I looked at him. I am in a board meeting. My heart is pounding, but I keep my face calm. This is the moment. No, I say, my voice clear and steady. I have not. My dad scoffs. Then what is this about? Are you here to try and negotiate? Let me be clear. The offer is $50,000. It is not going up. I'm not here to negotiate the price, I say. Amelia laughs, a short, condescending sound. Then what are you here for? To waste our time with more of your drama? Some of us have actual work to do. I look from her smug face to my father's arrogant one. They are so confident. They have no idea what is coming. I'm here, I say, leaning forward slightly, to discuss the discrepancies I found in the financial statements. Mr. Henderson, their lawyer, shifts in his seat. My clients have already assured me the financials are in order, he says smoothly. Perhaps you are misinterpreting something. Am I? I ask, my voice deceptively sweet. Let's talk about the consulting fees. The very large consulting fees paid to a company called AM Innovations LLC. Amelia's smile falters for a fraction of a second. My dad's expression doesn't change, but a muscle in his jaw tightens. That is a legitimate business expense, my dad says, his voice like ice. Our arrangement with that particular consultant is confidential. Is it? I press on. Because the sole officer of AM Innovations is Amelia Marie, my sister. It seems you've been paying your daughter hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. What exactly was she being consulted on? The room is silent. Mr. Henderson looks at Amelia, then at my dad, a flicker of alarm in his eyes. He clearly did not know this detail. My work for the company is my business, Amelia snaps, her composure cracking. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me when you are using company funds to artificially deflate the profits, I say, my voice getting stronger, which in turn deflates the value of my 10% stake. It's almost as if you were trying to make my shares seem worthless so you could buy me out for a low price. My dad slams his hand on the table. That is a serious and baseless accusation, Clara. You are walking on very thin ice. I am not afraid. His anger is the blustering of a man who knows he's been caught. Is it baseless? I ask. I look at Ms. Davies, who gives me a subtle nod. It's time. I reach into my bag and pull out a folder. I slide it across the table toward their lawyer. Perhaps this will refresh your memory. Mr. Henderson opens the folder. Inside are the printouts of the emails, the Clara problem thread. He begins to read. I watch his face. I see the professional calm drain away, replaced by pale, raw panic. He looks up from the papers, his eyes wide with horror, first at my dad, then at Amelia. He knows exactly what he is looking at. He knows it is indefensible. Richard, he says, his voice a choked whisper. What is this? My dad looks at the papers, then at me. The arrogance is gone. For the first time in my life, I see real fear in my father's eyes. Amelia just stares at the papers, her face white as a sheet. She looks like she's going to be sick. "Where did you get this?" my dad demands, his voice low and dangerous. "You left it on the family cloud drive," I say simply. "You said it yourself. I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but I am smart enough to open a folder." The silence in the room is deafening. They are trapped. They know it. Their lawyer knows it. The smugness, the confidence, it has all evaporated. All that is left is the ugly truth of their conspiracy, printed out in black and white on the polished conference table. "What do you want, Clara?" my dad asks, his voice defeated. All the fight has gone out of him. This is it. The reversal. The moment the power shifts completely. "This is not a negotiation," Ms. Davies says, speaking for the first time. Her voice is cold and precise. "This is a statement of fact. You, Mr. Richard, and you, Ms. Amelia, have engaged in a conspiracy to commit corporate fraud and tax evasion. The evidence is irrefutable. We have copies of these emails, and we have a forensic analysis of the company's financials ready to go." She pauses, letting the weight of her words sink in. My client has decided, against my initial advice, not to pursue criminal charges. She has no desire to see her family in prison. I see a flicker of hope in my dad's eyes. It's premature. However, Ms. Davies continues, she cannot allow this fraud to stand. Therefore, you have two options. Option 1, my client walks out of this room and delivers this entire file to the district attorney's office and the IRS. Your company will be seized. Your assets will be frozen. You will both face multiple felony charges. You will lose everything. She lets that hang in the air. Mr. Henderson has his head in his hands. "Option 2, she says, her voice dropping. You agree to a full and immediate transfer of ownership of the company to my client. You will both sign over your entire stock holdings to Ms. Clara for the sum of $1 each. You will sign your immediate resignations from the board and from any and all positions within the company. You will walk out of this building today and never come back. In return, this evidence will remain private. You will not face prosecution. You will be left with your personal assets, what's left of them, and your freedom." My dad stares at me, his face a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "You would do this? You would take my company from me? My life's work? You tried to steal from me," I say, my voice devoid of emotion. "You built this company on my grandmother's money and legacy, and you used it to humiliate and defraud me. You didn't see it as your life's work when you were bleeding it dry to pay for Amelia's wedding. You saw it as your personal bank. Now, it's going to be a real company again. My company." Amelia starts to cry, fat, ugly tears. "You can't do this," she sobs. "It's not fair." "Not fair?" I laugh, a sharp, humorless sound. "You thought it was fair when you were stealing my ideas. You thought it was fair when you were cashing checks from your fake consulting firm. You thought it was fair when Dad called me the dumb one at your wedding and you just smiled. The time for you to worry about fairness is long gone." I look at my dad. "What's it going to be, Dad? My company or a prison cell?" He looks at his lawyer, who just gives a slight, defeated shake of his head. The lawyer knows this is the only way out. My dad looks at Amelia, who is a sobbing mess. He looks back at me, his eyes burning with a rage that I know will never extinguish. But he is beaten. "Get the papers," he says to his lawyer, his voice a gravelly whisper. Ms. Davies was prepared. She slid a set of pre-drafted documents across the table. Stock transfer agreements, resignation letters, a non-disclosure agreement, binding them to silence. For the next hour, they signed their lives away. My dad's hand shook so much he could barely hold the pen. Amelia's signature was a mess of tear-stained ink. They didn't speak. They just signed. When it was done, Ms. Davies collected the documents and placed them neatly in her briefcase. "It's done," she said to me. Then she looked at my dad and sister. "You have 1 hour to clear your personal belongings from your offices. A security guard will escort you out." My dad stood up. He looked at me one last time. "You will regret this," he snarled. "No," I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You will." He turned and walked out of the room, a broken man. Amelia followed, not even looking at me, her face buried in her hands. They were gone. Just like that. The company was mine. I sat there in the silent conference room. The new owner, the new CEO, the dumb daughter who had just taken everything. The immediate aftermath was quiet and surreal. After my dad and sister were escorted out of the building, Miss Sao Davies and I met with the remaining senior staff. We didn't give them the sordid details. The official story was that my father was retiring immediately and that Amelia was leaving to pursue other opportunities. I was announced as the new majority shareholder and CEO. There were shocked faces, of course, but everyone was professional. They knew better than to question a change in ownership so sudden and absolute. My first act as CEO was to fire the accounting firm that had enabled my father's fraud. My second was to hire Chloe's firm to conduct a full, transparent audit. My third was to walk into my father's old office. It was a large corner office with a panoramic view of the city. His personal effects were already gone, leaving empty spaces on the shelves and walls. The only thing left was the heavy mahogany desk and the leather chair behind it. I walked over and sat down. It felt strange, foreign. For years, this room had been a symbol of my father's power, a place where I felt small and unwelcome. Now it was mine. I looked out the window at the sprawling city below. I had won. But it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like the end of a long, painful war. That evening, the real fallout began. My mom called. I had been dreading this call. I answered, bracing myself. "Clara Helen Richard, what have you done?" She shrieked, her voice hysterical. "I've taken control of my company, Mom," I said, my voice tired. "Your company? That is your father's company. You have destroyed him. He came home today a broken man. You threw him out of his own office. And your sister, she is inconsolable. How could you be so cruel? So vindictive?" I listened to her tirade, the familiar words of guilt and obligation washing over me. But this time they had no power. "Mom," I said, cutting her off. "Did they tell you what they did?" "They told me you concocted some wild story and blackmailed them," she sobbed. "Did they tell you they created a fake company to funnel hundreds of thousands of dollars to Amelia? Did they tell you they used company money to pay for her entire wedding? Did they tell you they did all of this to purposefully devalue my shares so they could steal my inheritance from me? Did they show you the emails where they called me too stupid to figure it out?" There was a dead silence on the line. She hadn't known. Of course, they hadn't told her the truth. They had painted me as the monster. They wouldn't do that," she whispered. But her voice lacked conviction. She knew her husband. She knew her favored daughter. She knew it was true. "They did, Mom," I said softly. "And I have the proof. I could have sent them both to prison. I chose not to. I took the company instead. That was the price for what they did. They built this family on secrets and lies, and it finally fell apart. That is not my fault. It's theirs." "But he's your father," she pleaded, her last line of defense. "And he is the one who chose to defraud his own daughter," I replied. "I have to go. I have a lot of work to do." I hung up. It hurt. It hurt to know that my mother's first instinct was to defend them, to blame me. But it was a clean break. The illusion of our happy family was shattered for good. A few days later, I got a call from my Aunt Carol, my dad's sister. I was hesitant to answer, expecting another lecture. But her tone was different. "Clara, it's your Aunt Carol," she said. I heard what happened." "I'm sure you heard my dad's version of it," I said wearily. "I did," she said. "And it sounded like a whole lot of nonsense. Your father has a habit of rewriting history to make himself the hero. I've known him my whole life. So I called your mother and I got a little more of the truth out of her." There was a pause. "I just wanted to call and say, Good for you. I was so surprised I didn't know what to say. What? You heard me, she said, a warmth in her voice I hadn't heard in years. Your grandmother, my mother, she was a brilliant businesswoman. She left you those shares for a reason. She knew your father would try to sideline you. She wanted you to have a foothold. He never respected you, Clara, because you were like her. You were creative and smart in a way he couldn't control. He only respects things he can dominate. Tears welled up in my eyes. To hear someone in my family finally see me, finally validate my experience, it was more healing than taking the company. Thank you, Aunt Carol, I whispered. That means a lot. You did what you had to do, she said. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for it. You protected your grandmother's legacy and your own. That night, Chloe came over to my new, much larger apartment, which I had rented now that I could actually afford it. She brought a bottle of very expensive champagne. To the new CEO, she said, handing me a glass. I knew you had it in you. We sat on my new couch looking out at the city lights. How does it feel? She asked. Strange, I admitted. Powerful. Sad. All at once. I have this company, this future, but I don't have a family anymore. You never had the family you thought you did, Chloe said gently. You had a group of people who used you and lied to you. Now you're free of that. You can build your own family, a real one. She was right. The grief I felt was for an illusion. The reality was that I was better off. I had been living in a cage with gilded bars, and now I was out. In the months that followed, I threw myself into my work. With Chloe's firm's help, we untangled the financial mess my dad had made. The company was fundamentally strong, its reputation solid despite the internal rot. It had been neglected, used as a personal slush fund, but its bones were good. I brought in new talent. I implemented some of the marketing ideas my dad had rejected, the ones he had called too risky. They worked. The company started to grow, faster and more healthily than it had in years. I discovered that I was good at this. I had a head for business after all. My creativity was not a liability. It was my greatest asset. It allowed me to see solutions where my father had only seen problems. I never heard from my dad or Amelia directly. I heard through the grapevine that they had sold their large family home and downsized significantly. My dad was forced into a retirement he never wanted. Amelia, with her reputation in the local legal community tarnished by whispers of the takeover, had to take a low-level job at a small suburban firm. Mark, her husband, was still a teacher. Their lavish lifestyle, funded by my company, was over. They had to live on a real budget now. They had to face the consequences. One day, about a year after the takeover, I was having lunch at a cafe downtown. As I was leaving, I saw Amelia. She was coming out of a discount clothing store, carrying a couple of plastic bags. She looked ordinary. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. Her clothes were generic. The radiant, untouchable bride was gone. In her place was just a woman who looked tired and stressed. Our eyes met for a brief second. I saw a flash of hatred in her expression, quickly followed by shame. She looked away first, hurrying down the street. Her head down. She didn't want me to see her like this. She didn't want to be confronted with the reality of what she had lost. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I just felt nothing. She was a stranger to me now. A ghost from a past life. I got back to my office, the corner office with the big windows. I looked at the photo on my desk. It wasn't of my old family. It was a new one, of me and Chloe, laughing on a recent vacation. My real family. I thought about my dad's words at the wedding, the words that had started it all. I always knew one of my daughters was the smarter choice. He was right, in a way. Amelia was the smarter choice for his con. She was compliant, greedy, and shared his contempt for me. She was the perfect accomplice, but I was the smarter one for the business. I was the smarter one for my grandmother's legacy. And most importantly, I was the smarter one for me. I had chosen myself. And in the end, that was the only choice that mattered. They had tried to make me small, to make me worthless. They had failed. They finally learned what it feels like to be underestimated, and I learned what it feels like to be free. The silence from their side of the world was the most peaceful sound I had ever known. The company thrived, and so did I. I never looked back.